It is. It's pressure. There's some little holes. You find that. It comes right in there, and pressure feeds that. What else do we have here? Spray, pressure. I heard this one. Splash, which really is kind of coming off the back of the, coming out of the connecting rods, the throws. It's splashing it all over the place. And I got one more.
Gravity?
Okay, I can go gravity. Let's be more specific.
Centrifuge. It drips.
What's that?
I said it drips.
Drips! That's the word I was looking for, drip.
Hey, you got it. Oh, that's all.
Drip is it. So where do we have drip oil?
To the rocker arms.
Rocker arms. So it can actually drips down the rocker tubes and then comes out and drips onto the rocker arms. And actually, if you guys look at the back of your rocker arms that you have, there we go. I have to hold it up to the microphone so we can see it. There's a hole right here. And that hole is where it drips down into that little hole and then lubricates inside of here. Pretty cheesy, right? Here's a Continental one, but it's got a hole right there. And so this is force-fed from the hydraulic tappets, comes up the push rod itself, not the tube, the shroud, into here. It's force-fed that goes around here, and there's a little hole right there on the foot where it actually comes out and, let's see, it's sitting this way, and lubricates up in here. So it comes right through. And it's got these little buttons on the end. You know what the little buttons are for?
People to ask questions?
Yeah. Yeah, teachers to ask dumb questions. Whenever you see a button, you can't drill corners, around corners. So it's drilled through that way. So this is drilled up that way, and this is drilled all the way through. So those are, then they plug them up. All right, we got those. Then within the engines, we have different types of oil systems. We have basically the wet sump and the dry sump. And I think the difficulty in your Q&A questions this week are going to be centered around remembering which system does what and where things are located. They ask some very difficult questions that it's like, wow, why would you ask that? So I'm going to see if I can make it easy. So wet sump. What kind of engine do you guys have?
Wet sump.
Wet sump. Okay. Wet sump, it's the most typical. Hey, good news. Most typical. That was my most typical. Has an oil sump on the bottom. It means that the oil pump sucks oil from the sump that's attached to the engine, goes through the oil pump, goes through the engine. When it's sprayed, splashed, dripped, whatever, it finds its way and just falls right back into the sump. So it's a very, I was going to say closed loop system, but they're all closed loop system. But it's all sort of self-contained right there on the engine. Well, the oil pump, let me see, oil pump sucks oil from the sump, which is attached to the engine, delivered to the engine, and oil is drained back into the sump. And let's look at a couple of them. What do we have here? Bypass valve. Recognize this? All right. Probably not the easiest diagram to follow, but this is your Lycoming oil sump, or I'm sorry, your Lycoming oil system with a wet sump. So here you have your suction screen. Remember I said you got to change out your suction screen or check your suction screen. So it goes right from the oil sump. First thing it's going to hit is the oil pump. Okay, from the oil pump, you're going to come to a decision point. Now, on the older Lycomings, like you have, or you guys have a screen on the back of your engine. There's a housing and a screen. I don't think I brought one in. Housing and a screen. And here's the screen. So there's your screen. So somebody asked, okay, what if your engine just came with a screen? Can you change it? Yes, Lycoming makes an adapter. There's a service instruction which just allows you to bolt on this adapter on the back. You take off the screen housing, bolt on this other housing, boom, you can spin a filter right on it. And that housing also has a place for a vernitherm valve. We'll talk about the vernitherm valve in a little bit, which is actually an oil temperature sensing unit. And what happens when it is hot, it expands and it plugs off a passage, and when it's cold, it shrinks down. So you have heat expands, cold shrinks, right? That makes sense because that's how everything works. And so if it was a cold engine, it would be shrunk down and it would open up this passage right here to go either here or this way. And which way is it going to want to go?
The easiest way.
The easiest way to go. So really very little oil is going to go through the oil cooler. It's going to go right through the oil bypass valve. And next thing you get in right through the pressure screen or the spin-on filter. This indicates that you have some extra passages drilled in here to the vacuum pump drive, or through here, the oil relief valve. Okay, then we go to the right back side of the case where you guys are torquing or tightening your spring and your ball. Okay, so that's your oil pressure relief. You do not want an oil pump that will only put out what the engine can use. You want the oil pump to exceed what the engine needs. So under all circumstances, all normal operating circumstances, you hope that that little ball, that 1028 Bravo ball, is off its seat and draining oil right back down in the sump. So it falls into the bottom of the case, it goes down and right back into the sump. All right, so you're bypassing what you don't need. If you run up the engine and use the mechanic to determine that hey, this engine just doesn't have enough oil pressure, what do?
Just the valve.
Adjust the valve. How can you adjust your valve?
With the spring.
Take it off, put a different spring on there with the hard.
Okay, take it off, put another spring on. Anybody else notice another way you can do it? Washers. 1/4-inch washers. You're allowed to stack them up on the back side of that. And that makes the spring, gives it less room, so you have more pressure. So all right, so it comes out of here. Going to go to the oil galleries. Now this is not like your engine. It has a right and a left gallery. So crankcase, that gallery is the one where you took the plugs out that goes from the front to the rear. So it's going to come right up the gallery and go into the main bearings, main bearing, more main bearing, and here's the camshaft bearing. Of course, over here it's going to represent all the crank pins. So it goes into the crankshaft, and it goes through lubricates that bearing. Then it goes through that little tube I talked about, lubricates the connecting rods, and then it splashes out. What you have that's unique about this, did you notice it's the trough system, trough technology. So rather than having actual pressure-fed tappets, you actually have this little trough built in. So the splash oil goes into the little trough and fills up and then drips onto the tappet bodies, which drips down the push rods and then drips down the push rod sockets to the rocker arms, bearings, and everything else. And then through gravity, and it goes right back around down to here and into the oil sump. So very simple system. Talk a little more about that. What do we have here? Don't want to talk about that one. All right, then the Continental, which we just looked at a bit ago, same thing. Sucked up through the pump around the